Hi, this is David Armstrong, and today I'll be presenting a utilization-focused program evaluation of the Joplin Virtual Academy's high school programming. So the first three things we're going to be looking at are the program's readiness for an evaluation, the organization's readiness for an evaluation, and the evaluator's readiness to conduct the evaluation. The Joplin Virtual Academy has been around for several years, and between March 2020 and August 2020 saw a massive growth both in student and staff population, going from around 140 students to around between 100 and 1,400, 1,500 students, and going from 2 to about 20 staff. Here we can see kind of the breakdown of the staff. What we're going to be looking at specifically is the high school portion of the Virtual Learning Academy. So even though we will be looking at the virtual school as a whole, specifically we'll be looking at the high school's portion of that. Mostly we'll be doing that because there's a lot more pressure for high school students to succeed in the virtual environment because their credit accumulation is what determines whether they graduate or not. And that, through research, has been shown to be one of the more difficult aspects of achieving graduation. The evaluator in this case would be myself, Mr. David Armstrong. I have a specialist degree. I've taken a doctoral class in performing a utilization-focused evaluation. I'm EMINT certified, as well as trained in adaptive schools and cognitive coaching, all which play a part in helping this be a successful evaluation. The next thing we're going to look at is our team of primary intended users. The first member of the team is going to be Ms. Shelley Tarter, who is the Director of Virtual and Alternative Learning for the Joplin Virtual Academy. She'll be instrumental as the leader of the team and as the person responsible for implementing any of the recommendations which come from the evaluation. The second member of the team is going to be Dr. Jamie Larimore, who is the primary instructor for the high school with the Joplin Virtual Academy. She's instrumental because she is the primary user of the program and the one who will be able to provide the most on-the-ground insight into the program for the evaluation. The third member of the team will be Miss Denise Krollman. She is the School Flex program instructor. In addition to that, she's also an assistant virtual monitor. She spends part of her time working with the middle school and part of her time working with the high school. She also has a high degree of expertise with the Edgenuity program, which is the point of contact for curriculum from the school to students as far as delivering the actual material. The final member of the team is going to be Miss Susan Ware, the Royas Wood Campus Administrative Assistant. She was the only other employee to work with the virtual program last year as Miss Tarter's administrative assistant, and what she does is bring expertise into the data collection, and it helps with parent contact because she is the primary point of contact whenever a parent calls and has questions. She fields a lot of that, and so she's definitely a vital member of the team. The next step in utilization-focused evaluation is situational analysis, in which the team led by the evaluator will look at several aspects of the evaluation, kind of determine what the purpose is, what questions will be asked. And so the first thing we did was conduct a force field analysis. Here the evaluator used his training from adaptive schools to run a meeting in which we discussed how to develop our central question, what we wanted to do, and then to do the force field analysis, we looked at forces driving change toward our goal and forces resisting change toward our goal. Then we tallied those up based on how we felt on a scale of 5, what was important as far as how the forces were interacting. Then we looked at whether there were more resisting or driving forces. As you can see, we said our main goal was to work toward BSIP goals, which were every virtual student will pass every assigned class, and every virtual student will earn at least a C in every assigned class. And there were definitely more resisting forces toward achieving that goal. Once we had developed our force field analysis, we wanted to look at the priority purpose of the evaluation, which was to define what questions we wanted to ask, or to get us to a point where we could define what questions we wanted to ask. In this evaluation, we decided there were 2 priority purposes we really wanted to answer, which was to what extent is the program effective in attaining its goals, which would be the BSIP goals, which we mentioned previously, and how can the program be more effective, so taking a look at where we are right now, and then how can we improve toward meeting the BSIP goals. In answering the priority purpose, we came to priority evaluation questions, which were the questions we wanted to ask of a focus group and with some parent and student surveys once we started collecting data. The 3 questions we really settled on as a group were, number 1, what are Joplin Virtual Academy's strengths, essentially what works? What are Joplin Virtual Academy's weaknesses, what isn't working? And what do you feel could be improved about the Joplin Virtual Academy? These we felt would give us insight into our priority purpose. For the data collection and analysis piece portion of the evaluation, the team settled on 3 forms of data collection, the first being a focus group, and the focus group was determined to be the primary intended users due to it would have been nice for the evaluator to have had other people be involved in that focus group, but due to the limitations of COVID, that wasn't really going to be an option. The second data we collected was from the Edgenuity program, and that was to look at course evaluation and course engagement and course completion. And then the final piece of data was a parent and student survey with the aforementioned questions. Based on the data we collected, this evaluation became a mixed methods research with both qualitative and quantitative data. In looking at that, we used the quantitative data from Edgenuity to determine how many courses were completed, what the grade distribution was, and we'll get into some of that here in just a second. And then the qualitative data, we took the focus group data and the responses from the questionnaire and developed themes, which we felt provided insight into our priority purpose questions, or our priority purpose. Now I'd like to take a second just to go over the results from the evaluation research. As I stated previously, the focus group was made up of the primary intended users team, which the evaluator took some time before we began the focus group to really sort of set the stage and help people disassociate their roles within the evaluation so that we could collect some better data. Everybody was very good about this, and I feel like it was very successful. But 3 themes were developed based on the 3 questions that we went over. The first theme was opportunity, and that had to do with, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of parents really reflected that, well, not parents, but within the study, within the focus group, they reflected that parents and other staff members and students had brought up a lot about the strengths of the opportunity which having a program like this provided. The second was communication, which this was where something that the team felt they needed to improve on as a group. And it was also interesting that every single group of people asked felt that communication was something which could either be improved or was seen as a weakness. In this case, the focus group saw communication as a weakness which they wanted to improve. Uh, the final the final theme which was talked about was staffing, which staffing was related to the other two in that it limited opportunity and it made communication more difficult, and it was generally seen that the focus group itself felt that for the program to be successful in achieving its goals, it really just needed more help. Following the focus group meeting, the evaluator worked with team members to gather data from Edgenuity. The first bit of data that we looked at was student engagement. Here, the student engagement was rated in two separate ways. The first way was to look at total percentage completed in amount versus amount of time within the program. So that bar there that goes from 0 all the way to 100 is displaying how much time a student spent were actually physically in the program, engaged with the program, versus the amount of time which Edgenuity predicts that each class should take to complete. So if a student spent, if the average Edgenuity time to complete a course was 40 hours and a student spent 40 hours, that would be 100%. If they spent 20 hours, that would be at the 50% mark for percent of time complete. That same data, which was used to develop the line plot, was then used to develop a pie chart, which is rated from 0 to 49, 50 to 99, and 100% complete. This was done because the team wanted to know based on DESI's metrics. So a student who completes 0 to 49% of a class, they get $0 in ADA for that student. The second group, the 50 to 99% complete, um, this DESI will award, I believe, 47% of ADA money, and then 100% complete DESI awards 94% attendance, like on ADA. So that was important for administration in justifying sort of the costs associated with the program, the costs associated with staffing, things like that. Part of the problem with this was that because the data was incomplete, um, each section each semester is divided into 3 sections, and by the time the data was able to be pulled, the third section had already begun, but those classes were obviously not completed. So there was a disproportionate number in the 0 to 49% as compared to what it would be later at the end of the semester when those classes had been finished. So this data that was definitely a limitation of what was available to help judge the results. So following looking at uh, student engagement, what we looked at was actual course completion. Here, what we were looking at in this line graph is the grade distribution for overall grades from 0 to 100%, and that follows along an aggregated line. So you can see that a significant number of people were definitely scoring over 50%, over 75%, and then even a few getting 100% in their courses. So just like with student engagement, that data was also put into a pie chart so that the grade distribution could be presented in another way and maybe more easily digestible. So what we see when we look at this is that a significant number of people are already achieving an A, B, or C in their class, so that those two for the D and the F are where obviously the team wants to move those students into the higher range, but they're already this first run of things is already looking initially like it's rather successful, with only 13.4 below a C but still passing, and only 16.1 failing, which was, I think, for the team a very good mark. So the two themes which developed as a result of the parent surveys were flexibility and communication. The first, flexibility, was developed as a result of several parents commenting about the flexibility of offerings, especially during the pandemic. The second, communication, was seen as sort of a theme developed around either a weakness or something which needed to be improved, with sometimes parents not necessarily understanding all of the expectations or feeling like they were not receiving enough information in a timely fashion from the program team. The student survey results resulted in three themes being developed. The first, being pacing, was that students really enjoyed the ability to kind of work at their own pace and complete things within their own time. So if a student wanted to jump ahead and do a lot of work, they could, and then take a day off or something along those lines. Support was seen as sort of a positive and a negative. Primarily negative in that they didn't feel like that they really missed that sort of one-to-one with a teacher where they could get the support they needed to complete assignments. Their student commented that they didn't know what to do and they didn't know how to fix a problem. And then the third, communication, was again um, primarily in a negative connotation in that they felt lost at times or confused, and that was sort of in relation to the support where they didn't know how to they didn't know how to access information and they didn't know how to access help. So that was definitely a theme which was developed out of the student survey results. So once the data had been presented to the team, the evaluator and the team kind of worked through what we learned as far as the themes were concerned and how those related to our primary questions and working toward the BSIP goals. Um, and so, what was developed out of the two recommendations was that each BSIP goal was given two recommendations on how the team felt based on the data, what would be an effective way of increasing the capacity to reach those goals. So the first BSIP goal was that every student would pass every class. Um, in reaching that goal, the data indicated that there were two recommendations um, that the team developed. The first was to increase staffing dedicated to communication so that parents, students, and other stakeholders are more aware of the program's expectations. And then number two, refine individual course structures to ensure that each course is completable by the average student within the time allotted. Um, both of those were felt. The team felt that they were important in taking a step in the right direction at the very least. The second BSIP goal was that each student would achieve at least a C in each class. And the two goals that were developed based on, or the two recommendations based on the data, was number one, continue to refine the support available to parents and students through expanded opportunities for tutoring both virtually and in person at Joplin High School. And then number two, develop a plan for students who are failing by providing options to transfer to an alternative program if it is evident that the program is not working as intended. The final piece, now that the recommendations had been given to the team, was to follow up with primary intended users and to sort of develop an action plan moving forward for how the data could remain relevant, and then for the evaluator to conduct a meta evaluation and review sort of the process through which everything had gone and make sure that all the ethical guidelines and standards which govern evaluations had been met, and that make sure that the evaluation was a good evaluation. So at the final meeting with the team, the evaluator sort of handed everything over to the the team and sort of worked with the team in developing what was going to happen next for the evaluation and the data which the evaluation produced. Primarily, that's going to belong to Ms. Tarter, who is the program's representative in the development of the BSIP goals at the accreditation meetings at the high school. So even though the team is going to continue to provide input for Ms. Tarter, she's going to be really the caretaker of where this goes next. The evaluation is also going to be made available to Ms. Sarah Mwangi, who is the assistant superintendent, essentially in charge of curriculum and oversees many aspects of the program in a large broad sense for the administration. The final thing for the evaluator to do in closing out the evaluation was to conduct a meta evaluation. Every aspect of this evaluation was conducted following Michael Quinn Patton's 17-step process for a utilization-focused evaluation. Additionally, several websites were used to help supplement areas of the text that were not necessarily clear toward the project. Specifically, the evaluator made use of Emerald Works Mind Tools to develop a force field analysis. And then secondly, used the University of Kansas's Community Toolbox to facilitate a focused group, which both contributed significantly toward the number one, the direction, and then the development of themes, which led to the results and the recommendations. So I feel like in this whole process, I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm grateful to have gone through it. And it's definitely something that moving forward I could see being a really important tool in my toolbox as an administrator. So in that regard, I think this class was definitely one that has a lot of potential to show up in the future for me as a professional. So I appreciate it. Thank you.